All right, in the final segment for Unit 8, we're going to talk about police misconduct or police corruption, which in the last few years has become uh, a very controversial subject in the public view as a result of the actions of some fairly bad police officers. And we talk about police corruption. You understand that police performance has always been subject to a great deal of moral controversy. Police deal with moral issues on a regular basis and have to make decisions based on ethics and morality all the time. And police behavior sometimes offends the moral sensitivities of observers. The average citizen on the street doesn't understand why police do what they have to do. They don't agree with the idea that cops can lie to you to get you to confess to a crime, but sometimes it's the only way. Let's say you got an incident where you're wrestling a juvenile into the car. The juvenile is resisting, and you've got to apply a pressure point to do it. And what the public sees is big bad police officer, wrestling and restraining a juvenile, doesn't understand the reasons for the restraint, or they pepper spray. That guy's holding a knife on you. He's got a knife, you've got a gun, and he takes a step towards you and you shoot him. And what the public sees is, oh, you shot the guy and all he had was a knife and you got a gun. Why the hell did you shoot him? Well, why didn't you shoot him in the arm and disarm him like I see on TV all the time? Some people don't understand that. They don't understand that a man within 10 feet of you with a knife is just as dangerous or more so than somebody with a gun. Because the ballistic armor that most police officers wear to defend themselves against bullets, ballistic armor is not all that useful against puncture weapons, depending on the type of armor the person is wearing. So somebody with a knife approaching you and gets within 10 feet of you, yeah, as a cop, you're going to shoot him because that individual is an imminent danger to you. And people don't understand that. And it means the police are under intense scrutiny because they have a lot of authority. They have more, it seems like, even though they don't, it seems like to most of us on the street that the police have more authority to use deadly force than an average person does. And because the police engage in discretionary behavior constantly, citizens have to trust the police. And when there is a minority of police officers who violate the public trust, through action or word, then the public is very angry, and rightfully so. And so police misconduct has always been a very controversial and salient issue dealing with law enforcement. Now, for us, we're going to talk about two different types of police misconduct. We're going to talk about corruption, and we're going to talk mostly about corruption. But besides corruption, the other type of police misconduct is physical and emotional abuse. That is when the police, as an example of that, is when the police use excessive force. And police officers who use excessive force are liable with certain limits. They are liable for their actions. Police officers are not allowed. The badge does not give you authority to just start beating on people. The badge does not give you authority to verbally abuse or harass people. And when police officers cross that line from reasonable force needed to apprehend a suspect or to stop a present and imminent danger, when police cross the line beyond that, then they are criminally and civilly liable. The police officer that emotionally abuses a suspect can be held liable for that. Emotional harm is just as much harm as it is physical. And we as citizens certainly should hold the police accountable for that. That's why we all cheered when the police officer who murdered George Floyd was convicted and sentenced to 22 years because the man deserved to go to prison. George Floyd did not have to die. And nothing he did called for his death. That police officer was convicted in a court of law and sentenced, and rightly he should have been. But then there's corruption. I mean, when the police cross the physical and emotional abuse line, that is, while it is often hard to prove, and be cautious when you are second guessing the actions of a police officer. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, a police officer uses force, he is doing it within his authority. He is following his departmental guidelines. Police officers who are in imminent danger for their own lives, or reasonably believe that a suspect is going to harm, it is imminent that suspect is going to harm the officer or another person, they have the authority to use deadly force. And they are trained to shoot center mass. That's what you do in the police academy. You're trained to shoot center mass. It's the biggest target. Because the last thing you want to do as a police, you're not shooting somebody in the head. You're not trying to shoot them in the hand and disarm, because this is a small target. These are small targets. The leg compared to the torso is a small target. And whether you're a police officer or not, when you discharge a firearm, if you lawfully discharge a firearm in defense of yourself or a third party, and you miss and hit somebody else, you are criminally and civilly liable for that miss. Because they teach you when they used to, I guess you don't have to get the license anymore after, but you learn back in the days when you take a class to get a license to carry a concealed firearm. One of the things they always tell you is that you are responsible when you discharge your firearm. You are responsible for everything that bullet hits. It's an argument in favor of the use of hollow point ammunition, not because you're trying to do more damage to the person you shot, but you're trying to prevent your round going through the person that you lawfully shot or justifiably shot and hitting an innocent person behind them. Whether you are a police officer or a citizen, if you shoot and miss and injure or kill an innocent bystander, you become responsible. Now, police officers have some protections under the law. They have some protections against that. As a citizen, you don't have those same protections. You are a person who carries a firearm, and you have the right to do so. Be very, very careful when you make that decision to discharge a firearm, because again, you're responsible for everything that round touches. That's why police shoot center mass, not because, hey, and a police officer will never say in court that I was shooting to kill. That correctional officers, on the other hand, shoot to kill, and intentionally shoot to kill. Police officers, they shoot to stop the threat, which means right here, center mass, because I don't want to miss. I don't want to hit the 15-year-old girl standing behind the guy. I don't want to miss, have my round go through the building behind me and shoot some little kid watching Saturday morning cartoons. So I'm shooting here not because I'm trying to kill the suspect. I'm shooting here because I don't want to miss. I have a justification to shoot that person, not anybody else. But when a police officer uses force unjustifiably, like in the George Floyd matter, like in several matters that have come up in recent memory, when a police officer uses force unjustifiably, then he has committed an act of police misconduct and a crime. But that's fairly straightforward. It comes down to, was the officer justified in the use of force or not? And then if they were justified in the use of force, did they use the appropriate amount of force based on the totality of the circumstances? That's fairly straightforward. Corruption, on the other hand, we can go into more detail. So corruption, you've already learned in previous units, corruption is very prevalent in law enforcement. You've got, the 1894 Lexow Commission, the report that corruption was systematic and pervasive in the New York Police Department. You've got bribes from bootleggers in the 1920s. You've got gambling syndicates being protected by paying off the police. I mean, corruption has just been out there. The Knapp Commission, in a KNAPP, which you read about in your textbook, The Knapp Commission actually created a typology of corrupt police officers, which are kind of cool. And then you add some other types that come later. So you've got grass eaters. Now, according to the Knapp Commission, the grass eaters are police officers who accept graft when it's available. They don't actively solicit bribes, but if you offered them one, they take it. There are meat eaters. Then the Knapp Commission compared that to meat eaters, which are police officers that are widely involved in corruption and actively solicit bribes. They're the guys that go into the local shop and go, a lot of crime around here. I think you're going to need to pay us a little protection money, or bad things can happen to you. These are the police officers that pull a guy, got a suspect in custody for selling dope, and says, well, I can take you in, or you can give me 20% of your earnings, and they give you 20%. You give me 20% of your earnings on a weekly basis, and I'll look the other way, and they even let you know when the other cops are in the area. That's a meat eater. The grass eater is the cop that pulls the guy over, that busts the guy for selling dope, and the dope dealer says, "Look, man, if I give you $1,000, will you look the other way?" And the guy says, "Oh, yeah, sure." Takes $1,000, lets the guy go. That's a grass eater. The commission concluded that grass eaters were more of a problem than meat eaters. I know that sounds strange. That sounds contrary to what you would think. But the Knapp Commission said the grass eaters are more dangerous, more of a problem, because there were more of them. And they created the wall of silence, or that blue curtain, behind which the meat eaters could hide and operate with impunity. Because even if you're not actively seeking bribes, if you're a guy who's taken a bribe, you're not going to turn in the cop who is soliciting them. Some other types of police officers in this kind of typology include white knights. They are really, really super rare. The white knights are the totally honest cop that will go to extreme measures on its ethical issues. Frank Serpico is a good example of one. In fact, if you want a little, you got, maybe when spring break comes up, if you want to watch a movie that kind of illustrates some of the principles in this lecture, watch Serpico. It's an old 1970s movie starring Al Pacino, where he stars as a real-life police detective named Frank Serpico, who basically gave evidence to the Knapp Commission and testified against many of his fellow officers who were taking bribes and soliciting bribes. Frank Serpico at one point was set up by some of his fellow officers during a drug bust, and they set him out front so the drug dealers could kill him, and he survived it. But these white knights, they are very rare. Unfortunately, they're rare. These are the cops that if they see another corrupt cop, they're going to call IA immediately. They're going to turn you in, regardless of the consequences to them, because they're the sad reality of police work in many places is that even if you're not a corrupt police officer, if you turn another cop in, the other officers will make your life a living hell if you rat them out to internal investigations or internal affairs. There are straight shooters. These are basically honest cops that will overlook minor indiscretions by their officers. They won't engage in corrupt activity, but they're not going to call internal affairs either. They're just going to they're going to look the other way as long as it's not too horrible. And then there are rogues, and rogues are cops that engage directly in criminal activity. These are, if you've ever watched the old show The Shield, that's all about a squad of corrupt cops. They would be rogues. I think Michael Chiklis was the star of that series. It was a fun show to watch. So what is police corruption? So police corruption occurs when a police officer acts in a manner in which he places his own personal gain ahead of his duty, that then results in the violation of police policy and procedure or the law. So again, police corruption, your textbook test definition. It occurs when a police officer acts in a manner that places his own personal gain, his own personal interest above his duty as a police officer, and violates police policy or procedure, or criminal law, or both. Corrupt police acts contain three elements. The first element is that the acts are forbidden by some law, rule, regulation, or ethical standard. Second element is that they involve the misuse of the officer's authority. And the third is they involve some actual or expected material gain on the part of the police officer. So what are some types or examples of police corruption? The most common type of police corruption that is kind of a wobbler is corruption of authority. And why I say it's a wobbler is because it's really based on departmental policy. Corruption of authority involves unofficially or officially unauthorized gains by cops that don't violate the law. Things like getting free meals or free drinks, getting free entertainment discounts, or police discounts at shops, or other free services. It's the acceptance of a gratuity. All right, it's police who accept free. All right, give me an example. When I was a kid, my first job as a teenager was working in a convenience store. And the rule from the boss was always, when the police come in, they don't pay for their coffee or sodas. Now, if they want, smokes or food or whatever, you charge them for that. But if the cop comes in, all he wants is, a cup of coffee or a soda from the fountain, a fountain soda, you don't charge them for that. They get that for free. And the idea for the store owner for that is, if the cops know they can get free coffee from my store, then they're going to come around more often. It's like, okay, there's a stereotype, cops like donuts. Well, I got two donut shops right across the street from one another. One donut shop, the cops get a free donut and coffee every time they come in. The other one, the cops don't get nothing. Where are the cops going to go? They're going to go to the place where they can get free donuts and coffee. Well, the problem with that, accepting gratuities like that, is that, let's say there's a robber, there's a bad guy working in the neighborhood. Which donut shop is he going to rob? Because if he's a smart criminal, he's going to, spy out the situation a little before he goes walking into the place with a gun and demanding money. And he's going to realize, hey, when the cops come in the neighborhood, they always go to this donut shop and they never go to this one. And so I'm going to rob this one because the cops are over there. This creates an inequality in law enforcement, an inequality in protection. On its face value, is there anything wrong with a cop accepting a discounted meal or getting a free drink from a convenience store? Is there anything really morally or ethically wrong about that? As long as it doesn't violate, department policy, no. But most people call it presents what we call a slippery slope. The cop is willing to take a free drink, something that he hasn't paid for. What else down the line might he be willing to do? And so there are many police departments that prohibit police officers from taking gratuities. And they're forbidden by department policy from doing that. They're not allowed to accept free drinks at fast food restaurants or free meals. For a while when I got out of the service, I worked at Wendy's. It was also our policy that police officers could get a combo meal for free from us. And we have code in the cash register for law enforcement discount. And, we rang it up and said, no, I'm sorry, sir, your meal is on us. And in that city, that was, that police department in that town did not have a policy against it. So we had cops at lunchtime. We had a lot of cops in our restaurant. We didn't get, the whole time I worked there, we never got robbed. That's the point in offering cops free gratuities is, if they come and they frequent our establishment, the bad guys go somewhere else. Again, it's a slippery slope, and it creates an inequality in the protection offered by the law enforcement. And so a lot of departments will say, even though this isn't really immoral to accept this, we say no. Which is why in cities like that, if you want to do something nice to our cop, and I and a lot of people occasionally will do this, you're at lunch or something at a restaurant and you see a couple of on-duty police officers having lunch, you don't walk up to the cop and say, hey, do you mind if I buy your lunch? Because many places the police officers say, well, I really appreciate that, sir, but department policy says I'm not allowed to accept that. So to get around that, what you do is you just tell the waitress, hey, give me their check and wait till I leave to tell them. And I've done that several times where, I see a couple of cops, I'm like, their meal's on me. Just, when they get ready to leave, you tell them their meal's been paid for. And it's funny, you'll watch the cop looking around, try to see who it is that bought their meal, and you just sit there looking at your own, looking at your dinner, and you'll say a word. And then you get around that department policy because, then there's nothing the cop can do about it. The police officer might have to report that to sergeants, hey, some citizen paid for our meal, and, we don't know who it was. And the restaurant didn't charge me because someone else paid for it. And some departments, that's an exception, where the officer might not be able to receive the discount or the free meal from the restaurant. But if some citizen, buys their meal, then that might not violate department policy. It's a nice thing to do for cops sometimes. I mean, these men and women, again, most of them are not these corrupt cops we're talking about. Most of them are honest, hardworking men and women, and they are protecting their community and occasionally are putting their lives in jeopardy so that we can feel safe. What's the occasional free meal to a couple of cops compared to what they're doing for us? And a lot of small police departments, the pay is crap. This guy, you get some man or woman police officer, they're putting their life on the line, putting their lives in jeopardy so that I can feel, that we can feel safe, and they're making a lousy 40 grand. Pay for the lunch sometime. All right, other types of corruption include the kickback. This used to be really popular. And the police departments nationwide have gone and figured out ways to avoid it, to prevent it. But the old day was like you get tow truck operators or lawyers, bail bondsmen were really bad about this, and other people who would get the police to refer customers to them and then would get a kickback. And what that is okay, say I get into a car accident, police officer hands me a card and says, hey, once you tow this tow truck down, here's the card. Here's a card from a tow truck company. They'll take good care of you. And just make sure you give this card to the tow truck driver when he picks up, when he picks up your car. And so, the tow truck can give the truck driver the card. Tow truck operator sees the police officer's name, and then you pay the tow truck driver however much money to tow your vehicle, and then the operator gives some of that money to the cop, kicks it back to the cop. Works the way for bail bondsmen too. It used to be one of these that the cop would have a stack of business cards from one of the local bail bondsmen. He'd arrest some guy, and as he'd send him justice, here's the name of a good bail bondsman. They'll do you right. The cop's name will be on it somewhere, and the cop gets a kickback from the bondsman. The difficulties inherent in this are obvious, and what departments have often done to get away from this is that the police officer on the scene is no longer calls the tow truck. The dispatch department will have a list of all the tow truck companies in town, and will just rotate through the list, using different tow truck companies so that there's no preferential treatment given to one company or another, as kickbacks are illegal. Other types of corruption include opportunistic theft from victims in crime scenes and unprotected property. This happens, I come to the scene of a robbery, jewelry store gets broken into, and I'm the investigating officer. And, the bad guy's coming, he's stolen some jewelry, taking the money out of the cash register. And, there's still some property left. And I, the police officer, take a brand new Rolex and just tell the guy, hey, report this as stolen, and, put it in my pocket. That's opportunistic theft. I bust a drug dealer. I bust a drug dealer, and, he's got $100,000 in small unmarked bills in a bag in the back of his car. And when I turn it into evidence, I turn in $90,000 and put $10,000 in my kid's savings account or in my safe deposit box. That's opportunistic theft. There's also some officers that engage in protection rackets, where they take payments from criminals that are running, take payments, say, from criminals, from pimps or drug dealers, folks that run illegal gambling dens, And they'll take payments, they'll take regular payments from these folks for a protection money. So they want to arrest them, and two, they'll give them a heads up. If there's going to be, you call them and say, oh, hey, there's going to be a raid in your neighborhood, you need to shut down. And the cops will tell them that ahead of time in exchange for regular payments. And then finally, there's the fix. Oh, wait a minute, it's not finally, there's more. There's the fix. That means basically squashing prosecution on an arrest or taking care of tickets for profit. It's that, that thing you see on the news. You say, hey, I got this. You go to your cop friend, hey, I got this ticket. You think you could make it go away and give them some money to make them go? Yeah, that's illegal. Now the fix has kind of disappeared a lot in modern technology. Because it used to be you just write the ticket, and at the end of your shift you turn in your ticket book, and that's how you would know that people got tickets. And so what you do as the cop, if someone bribed you to take care of a ticket for them, you just went and found the other copy of the ticket at the courthouse, and you ripped it up or made it go away. Now everything's done electronically, so fixing tickets is a hell of a lot harder than it used to be. Of course, other types of corruption include direct criminal activities. That's police officers that can get engaged in robbery and selling drugs and extortion, stuff like that. And then there's internal payoffs where police officers are paying each other. Where I'm a guy in the street and I really want Christmas Eve off, but it's not my regular day off, and everyone's competing. Everyone puts their name in a hat for to get Christmas Day off, and what I do is I just bribe the sergeant to put my name at the top of the list. Or there's a certain week that everybody wants to go on vacation, and I'm the low guy in the totem poles for seniority, and I really want to make sure that I get the days off I want. I might pay my sergeant a little something to make sure I get the vacation day I want. Or I'm a little, I didn't quite make the top of the promotion list, and so, but oral boards are really subjective, so I don't pay off the guys on the oral board to make sure that I get promoted over somebody else. That would be internal payoffs. And those are some examples. Of course, police misconduct, like we talked about, is not limited to corrupt activities like that. It also includes things like perjury, which is lying under oath, physical and emotional abuse, and even murder, like in the case of the former police officer who killed George Floyd. That case was most definitely murder. All right, that's it for Unit 8. Good luck on the test. Make sure you're managing your time well this week, since there's that one extra activity, the exam, that you need to take care of, by the end of this unit. All right, ciao. Good luck on the test.